Amazon is now hiring near you. We're looking for team members who know that delivering important packages is important work. Ready to work hard and make someone's every day? Ready for benefits and flexible shifts? Immediate hourly roles are available at amazon.com/apply. That's amazon.com/apply. Amazon is an equal opportunity employer.
All right, so check this out. Yes on Prop 22 is about protecting rideshare and food delivery services at risk of going away in California. Yes on 22 saves access to these services by letting drivers keep their flexible work as independent contractors. And 22 provides driver benefits like healthcare. It's a win-win. Yes on 22. Ad paid for by Yes on 22. Save app-based jobs and services. A coalition of on-demand drivers and platforms, small businesses, public safety, and community organizations. Committee major funding from Uber Technologies, Lyft, and DoorDash.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is episode 3 of our Core 4 series. Tonight, we're going to talk about Lesley Groff. Lesley Groff was one of Jeffrey Epstein's most trusted assistants. I mean, she was vital to what was going on with Jeffrey Epstein. She was always around him. She had a very significant part to play within the criminal enterprise, from everything we can gather, right? From all of the evidence that's been made public, from all of the breadcrumbs that have been left out for us to follow. That's the only place you can end up, right? If you're looking at this from an unbiased perspective and you're looking at this as an investigator should, then that is the only place you end up. She was a very, very significant part of what was going on with Jeffrey Epstein and his criminal enterprise, and she was also very close to Jeffrey Epstein personally. Tonight, we are going to talk about Lesley Groff. We're going to find out a little bit about who she is, what her role supposedly was inside of this criminal enterprise. And again, the question will be asked, why are we not hearing more about her? Why is she not more prevalent in the news? Why her, or the rest of the Core 4 for that matter, have escaped scrutiny? Why have they escaped scrutiny? Because I don't even have an answer for you folks. I wish I did. I wish I had some kind of, plausible, rock-solid answer for you on how these people have escaped justice so far, but I don't. There are only two things that it could be, right? Complete and utter incompetence on the part of the Department of Justice and the FBI for decades, or people involved with overseeing this sort of thing are complicit. So it's only one of the two things, in my opinion. And I highly doubt, with as much as they do bungle things, I highly doubt that they've been incompetent over decades when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein. I highly doubt that they've just missed it, okay? It's willful negligence at this point. And is that still occurring right now? I don't know. I don't have any sort of inside information to what's going on in the prosecutor's office. The only information I have available to me is the same stuff you have available to you. So I don't know if there are still forces at work that are still trying to squash and squish this case. You would think that there are, right? There's still a lot of powerful people who are in jeopardy of being outed. A lot of powerful people who are in jeopardy of really having their names even destroyed more than they already have been. We're talking the Dubins of the world and the Dershowitzes and the Jess Staleys, et cetera, et cetera. These people, they're already, having their name just dragged through the mud, and rightfully so. You can't associate with somebody like Jeffrey Epstein after his conviction and then expect nobody to ask questions about those associations or to criticize or to investigate you after he gets arrested a second time. What makes you think that you aren't going to be under the microscope? You were associating with a known pedophile, a known sex offender, and he was reoffending the whole entire time he was out, according to accounts. So don't act like, there's no reason for there to be scrutiny. Right? You see some of these people, they act like, oh, well, I wonder why my name's even being brought up in this. Well, your name's in court documents. And when it comes to somebody like Lesley Groff, well, it's not even just that. It's much deeper than that. We know that she played a big part. And tonight, we're going to talk about her and the part that she played within the Jeffrey Epstein criminal organization, according to multiple witnesses. This article is from the MiddletownPress.com, and the author is Robert Marchant, and it was published on August 4th, 2019. The headline is New Canaan resident was assistant to Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein knew how to present a respectable facade. Well, he did. There's no doubt about that. Until you got to know the guy, he comes off as maybe an eccentric rich guy. Most of them are, right? I don't know what all of your experiences are with really rich people, but when I was working in the casino industry, I was around them all the time, and a lot of them are eccentric, right? So it doesn't make them all molesters or abusers. Of course it doesn't. But you can understand when somebody's weird like Jeffrey Epstein and you're just meeting him, you don't automatically jump the gun and say, oh, well, this guy's definitely involved in a pedophile ring, right? But once you get to know him and you start to spend time around him and you start to see all these little girls running around, or even if they look 16, 17, 18 years old, right? You don't ask questions as somebody that's hanging around this guy. A normal thinking person would be like, hey, well, hold up. What's the deal with all of these kids around here, my man? You don't have no children of your own. I don't see any nieces and nephews. Why do you have all these little girls running around here dressed like that, giving all of your sick-ass buddies a massage? See, that's what would happen if I walked into a place like that. There'd be a problem right away. Right away. But yet all of these rich, so-called elite people who have control over mine and your children's lives walk into a room like that and it's, all systems go. Oh, let me get my massage too. Hold on. It's cool. I'm going to keep my underwear on. So I haven't done anything wrong because I'm going to keep my underwear on. But this sex trafficking victim who's 16 or 17, they're going to give me a massage on my nasty ass, old wrinkly ass, disgusting back. On what planet is that okay? On what planet is that acceptable? I know for me, speaking personally, like usual, because again, that's the only person I speak for ever is myself. I know I walk into a situation like that, there's going to be a big old problem. And there's not going to be an outcome that doesn't end up with the police being called. Because it offends my sensibilities, to be honest with you. You want to get down, you want to get massaged, you want to go to a professional joint. Right? You go have an old weird white guy outing to the massage parlor. You don't need 16 and 17-year-old girls who were working as towel girls in a training room to come over and give you massages. Little girls who were at school earlier that day in 10th grade algebra class coming over to give you and your nasty ass friends massages. And for someone like Lesley Groff to sit around for the whole entire time and be a huge part of that and to be able to get off without ever facing justice, without ever really even being sat down and really grilled because she pled the fifth and because she was protected by this plea agreement, it's beyond the pale. It is beyond the pale. The accused sex trafficker, now in federal lockup, made multi-million-dollar donations to Harvard, invited A-list celebrities to his parties, and employed the services of a handful of administrative assistants, all loyal, polished, and professional. Epstein paid them top dollar, well above the industry average, and showered perks on them like high-end hairdressing services. We talked about that already as well. They went to the Fakai salon, and that was part of their package, right? That was part of their compensation. That was part of their perks, part of their overarching fingers in his criminal pie. Again, if this was normal people and this was a criminal organization, say they were selling drugs and these people were all getting these perks, they were all making money off of a central drug dealer who is, say he's the main guy, the main distributor, and then he has all these other people working for him. Well, they're getting money from him. They're working for him. If this was a regular case against the cartel or the mafia, he'd be nailed for a leadership position. all the people who received money from him would be scooped up as well, because now they were partaking in a criminal enterprise. Even if they didn't know, the law doesn't care about that. But somehow these people who were running this trafficking ring of little girls and women somehow doesn't face the same exact hammer blow by the Justice Department. How is it possible? Now those assistants are gaining new scrutiny as recently disclosed court documents refer to them as potential co-conspirators in Epstein's tangled web of sexual predation and shadowy financial transactions. You know, they always tiptoe around it, right, with the shadowy financial transactions. We all know he was laundering money, all right? I think it's pretty safe to say at this point he was laundering money, okay? You think those banks that were popping up in the Virgin Islands and all of these shell corporations and companies were just for good measure, just because he decided he wanted to invest in a new company that nobody even knew about, that wasn't turning a profit? Come on, folks. Come on. And for the prosecution to talk about not having enough evidence, when I could sit around here in my quarantine outfit, t-shirt and pajama pants, by the way, and figure this all out, while he is perplexed, I guess. I don't understand how that's even possible. Put me on the payroll. I'll do it for half the cost, okay? I'll compile all the evidence for you if you guys don't have the time to do it. Pretty simple. Just go ahead and read the articles. Look at the depositions. Look at what the people who have said who were on the flights. I mean, come on. There is no reason to be dragging your feet when it comes to something this important. There is no reason to be dragging your feet when it comes to the whole entire integrity of the whole justice system. You guys got to do a better job. One potentially has brought the scandal to Fairfield County. Lesley Groff, 52, a longtime assistant to Epstein, lives in New Canaan. She was described in a lawsuit filed by one of Epstein's purported victims as a scheduler and travel coordinator for her boss' abusive activities, as well as the figure who looked after the girls' living needs and maintained rules of behavior for them. Now you're seeing what each of these women, what their role was inside of the organization. We already talked about Sarah Kellen Vickers and how her role was acting as Ghislaine Maxwell's lieutenant, basically, learning all the tricks of the trade, helping groom the young ladies that were procured. And now we're seeing Lesley Groff. And her job was to look out for their living needs, and she maintained the rules of behavior for them. So they kept to a certain set of rules and a certain set of standards set by Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. So she's not innocent in this, folks. This is more than just an enabler as well. Remember, we've talked about the enablers, and there's several different rings of people who were close to Epstein. And on the very, very outside, we have the enablers that were hanging out with him at parties in social situations, but have never been accused of abusing anybody or, going to his island, right? And then we have the next level, the people that were at the island and, nobody really knows what they were up to because they never even told the truth about being there. But there's no one coming forward and saying that they abused anybody or raped anybody. And then you get a little closer into that third ring, and that's where you find Lesley Groff and Adriana Ross and Nadia Marcinkova and Sarah Kellen Vickers. And that's the very, very close to the leadership of this criminal enterprise, and where they're engaging in activities that are helping the criminal enterprise run smoothly and helping the criminal enterprise continue on its path of destruction and torture of these survivors. And the core lieutenants were a huge part of that. And we see how it's all unfolding here on this podcast and in this series of podcasts that we're doing, and that's why we're doing this. So in each one of these episodes, you can see what their jobs were, and you can put the pieces together for yourself, right? Because that's what I always say. Always read the articles yourself. Always put the pieces together for yourself. I'm never talking at any of you. I'm talking with all of you always. But I'll tell you right now, there is zero chance that someone like Lesley Groff should have been part of that immunity deal. That's one thing I can tell you for sure. That lawsuit, in which Groff was named as a defendant, along with Epstein, was eventually withdrawn following an out-of-court settlement in late 2018. The plaintiff's attorney, David Boies, told the New York Post at the time, "We are pleased with the settlement. It provides as much compensation as money can provide for the horrific damage done by sex trafficking. The terms of the settlement were not publicly revealed." And again, you know how I feel about survivors in this case. They have to get whatever they can get, right? I don't blame any one of these girls who are abused by this sick bastard if they go after the dough and they catch themselves a payday. Usually I'd be looking sideways about stuff like that, because unfortunately that's the society we live in, where we can't trust people to be honorable. We can't trust people to be not take advantage of situations. And we have to be critical about everything. And when it comes to this situation with Jeffrey Epstein, I've been very critical of all the evidence as I've gotten it across my desk, so to speak. As I've read the articles and I've seen the evidence and I've read the court documents, I look at it all critically. I didn't just come into this saying, oh, well, 100% I believe everything Virginia says, because that was not the case. I read everything she had to say. I looked at the evidence she presented, and then I saw the bullshit, weak-ass nonsense that was coming from the other side, and it's obvious who's telling the truth here. And it's obvious once you do your research and you read, the books that are out there for you to read right now, like Filthy Rich and, obviously, Relentless Pursuit by Bradley Edwards that's coming out. You read these kind of books and you start to understand and you start to put all the pieces together and the big picture starts to form in front of your face. And once that happens, you see where everybody fits. Right? You don't need to be a seasoned investigator to do that. You don't need to be somebody who's sitting in a meeting room right now with a board and a bunch of pictures pasted up on that board, and you're doing this extensive search. That none of that even needs to occur, because the evidence is so right in front of your face and so plain as day that if it's all just put together in a catalog and laid out, it's impossible for anyone not to see what was going on here. A lawyer for Groff this week said she was not part of his alleged criminal activities. Such a lie. I am sorry, in my opinion, that is such a lie. There is zero chance that Lesley Groff was not involved in his criminal activities. Zero chance. Miss Lesley Groff worked as an executive assistant in Jeffrey Epstein's business office, along with attorneys and other executives. The attorney, Michael Bachner, wrote in an email. As if that matters. Who was she working with? Let me guess. Kahn and Indike? Probably those two idiots. I mean, because she's working with lawyers, this is what they would have us believe, folks. Just because somebody's a lawyer, just because somebody's a politician, just because somebody's some rich banker or some Wall Street guru, that we're all of a sudden supposed to just believe that they're this great person and there is no way that they could be guilty of what they're being charged with, because they have what? A lot of money? Because they've achieved some success professionally? That gives them a blanket, that gives them a shield when they are sick in the head. Because these people are sick in the head. These people we're dealing with right now, these people we're talking about, they're sick in the head. And I believe Indike and Kahn are sick in the head too. And what other lawyers were there? The lawyers that defended him when he was arrested the first time, those people are all sick in the head too. I'm on record saying that as well. So, I mean, let's be real. Just because she was working in an office with lawyers doesn't mean I believe her bullshit-ass flimsy excuse when there's all of these credible witnesses offering a completely different accounting. Miss Groff, however, never knowingly booked travel for anyone under the age of 18 and had no knowledge of the alleged illegal activity whatsoever. Miss Groff, a parent herself, is incredibly shocked and deeply upset about the alleged wrongdoings of Mr. Epstein. Again, how many times are all of these sick, disgusting bastards going to use their children as part of their alibi, as part of their cover, as part of their protection and their armor? We saw Andrew with the whole, we were eating pizza. Don't even get me started with Glenn Dubin and the way with their kids. Now we see it with this as well. Oh, Miss Groff is a parent herself. So what? Just because you're a parent means you can't be a sick, disgusting bastard? The BTK killer wasn't a parent? I mean, come on. These excuses are just they're gross. There's no way that any jury on the whole entire planet, like I said, I don't even think the Taliban would accept this sort of nonsense. And to think that the United States prosecutors, okay, the vaunted SDNY, who went after the mafia with zero fear, and not only went after them, folks, they dismantled the mafia. Now they're dragging their feet and they won't go after an executive assistant? What are they afraid of? Who is more powerful than the mafia in this country, especially back then in the 80s, the 70s and the 80s? Who is more powerful than the mafia that would make federal prosecutors drag their feet? Only a couple of options, folks, and I'll leave it up to you to decide which one you believe it is. Earlier this year, Groff's name emerged as a potential co-conspirator in another court document. Oh yeah, potential co-conspirator. No, just a co-conspirator, okay? Not potential in my opinion. Not potential at all. If she was just a potential co-conspirator, why did she need to get immunity under that deal? Why was she included in that? The secret non-prosecution agreement that Epstein managed to secure in 2008 was revealed after a Florida judge determined it violated the rights of his alleged victims. A petition to nullify the agreement quoted it as granting immunity to Epstein's potential co-conspirators, identified in the document as including but not limited to Sarah Kellen, Adriana Ross, Lesley Groff, or Nadia Marcinkova. Including but not limited to. Do you know how significant that is, considering the allegations against Dershowitz, who was part of the legal team and who spearheaded this immunity deal? I wonder why he would make it make it refer to including but not limited to. Was he covering his own ass there, folks? I guess it's just another coincidence, right? It is just another coincidence in this case. And if you think that there is some sort of misdeed going on here, you're the problem. How dare you not accept the narrative? Groff has a work history with Epstein dating to 2001. Epstein bragged about his assistance in a 2005 New York Times business feature, referring to his office team as an extension of his brain, who provided invaluable assistance for his investment business. Again, all of these women, Lesley Groff, Sarah Kellen Vickers, Nadia Marcinkova, all of these girls who worked for him and were part of this leadership ring, they all need to have a long time to think about what they have done in a very, very, very small environment, if you get my drift. The article said Groff was paid $200,000 above the typical rate on Wall Street in 2005, far above the industry standard. Of course she was. That was to buy her silence as well. Okay, everybody that worked for Epstein and worked in his houses or his holdings or his planes or wherever he might be up to his devious, disgusting, dark shit was paid way more dough than what the industry standard was, and that was the shut your mouth fee. And everybody has a number, right? Now, I don't know. I highly doubt anyone on this podcast has a number when it comes to talking about shit like this, right? Not that small of a number to be involved in something like this. You better add a bunch of zeros. But someone like Lesley Groff, for her to act like she was just an administrative assistant and she was just sitting in the office and she was just answering phone calls and she wasn't up to nothing devious, but yet she's making $200,000. You know how much money that is? That is a whole hell of a lot of money, especially when all of your other bills are already taken care of as well. She was living the high life, folks, while these little girls were coming in by the 3 and the 4 and getting molested, while these young girls who were 14, 15, coming in and being raped by Jeffrey Epstein, her boss, her friend, the extension of his brain even. And this lady is still running free? The piece also said Groff and her colleagues had a charge account with a society hairdresser for unlimited use and the services of a pricey Manhattan restaurant, La Cirque, for takeout meals. They were on call 24 hours a day. Again, I'm still looking for anybody who worked at La Cirque at that time. If anybody out there on this podcast knows anybody who's listening to this podcast, knows anybody who worked at La Cirque during Epstein's reign of terror there in the early 2000s and maybe even a little bit beyond, and they have any knowledge of these girls coming in, shoot me an email and we'll talk about things, because I want to, I definitely want to get a better feel for what was going on there, and for a better idea of just how I don't even know the word I'm looking for right now. How deep were these roots, right? That's really what I want to get to. How deep were these roots? We know that there were a lot of other people who were enabling this. We know that all of these people who were friends with Jeffrey Epstein, who were coming to his house, were enabling this. And we know that Fakai from the salon was really good friends with Jeffrey Epstein, and he's another one that should probably be subpoenaed. And I guess what I'm trying to get to here with Le Cirque is I'd like to know more about that restaurant and the owners and the managers at the time when Epstein was using it as one of his places to send these girls. Because, you know, I was shocked with how much I learned when I did my trip to Santa Fe by talking to the average Joe, people that worked in these places. And you heard a lot of that on the podcast, right? So we talked a lot about the different people who had jobs that had access to the comings and goings maybe of Epstein, or, you know, ex-law enforcement, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm trying to do the same thing in New York, considering I'm from New York originally, and it'll be way cheap for me to go to New York and investigate this case. So that's on my agenda as well. So hopefully somebody out there listening to the podcast, or somebody who's familiar with the podcast, or one of you knows somebody maybe who worked at Le Cirque at the time who is willing to talk to me. Epstein lauded his assistant's ability to spot trouble and ensure good communications with his investors, though the article did not describe his investment business in any detail. The accused trafficker told the business reporter that he bought Groff a Mercedes-Benz E320 to make her commuting easier after she had a child, and he paid for a full-time nanny so that she could keep working for him. There is no way that I could lose Lesley to motherhood, Epstein told the Times. And of course he couldn't. He needed Lesley Groff there to keep the air of secrecy going. He needed Lesley Groff there so that he could keep up the charade. He had to make sure that somebody he trusted was in this position of importance for him. Because again, we see how important each one of these girls' roles were when we talk about the criminal enterprise and keeping it moving like a well-oiled machine for decades. The devotion appeared mutual. It comes down to the bond, Groff told the newspaper. I know what he is thinking, and I know when I need to be fast. It's a nice roll we are on. It's a nice roll that you're on, huh? A nice roll for who? You and the rest of the rich, disgusting, spirit-cooking wackos, maybe, in New York. Maybe you're on a roll, but for these survivors, there's been no roll. There's been no $200,000 job. There's been no Benzito waiting for him in the parking lot. There's no high-end haircuts. There's no going to Le Cirque and getting whatever they want on the menu. There's only pain, suffering, and trying to push on through PTSD and countless other issues that they've had to deal with, all because you were involved in covering up and facilitating Jeffrey Epstein, raping, trafficking, and abusing women for decades, Lesley Groff. Richard Schechter, a former federal prosecutor, said Epstein appeared to have developed the same set of skills and trickery that allowed criminals like Bernie Madoff to steal money from clients and investors over a long period of time. 100%. 100%. He was already involved in the money laundering scheme, the pyramid scheme that he was running with Hoffenberg, I believe his name is, Jim Hoffenberg, something like that, whatever. But his boy went to prison for a grip of years. Epstein somehow skated. Usually in the criminal world, that means you're a rat, by the way. But can you be a rat if you're an asset of the government anyway? If you're already working with the government, are you really a rat, or are you more of a double agent? I'm going to go with a double agent. I would analogize it to white collar crime, he said of the Epstein operation. There are earmarks in this case of white collar fraud. That's part of what makes the crime possible, the air of legitimacy. Again, that's where people like Wexner come in. He gives him legitimacy right off the bat. A guy like Les Wexner, back then, giving Epstein control over the whole entire vault, That automatically vaults Epstein into a place of legitimacy among these other investors, among these other people like Wexner. If Lex is doing it, he must know what he's doing. Les Wexner. Maybe we should have Epstein control our money. And then before you know it, you're on the island and you're part of the whole entire blackmail operation because you can't keep it in your pants and you have to, dance off with a little 16-year-old girl. Now you're caught on footage and now Epstein owns you. Oh, what a tale we weave. Crimes like those Epstein is accused of rely on the trappings of success, said Schechter, who worked trafficking cases in white-collar crime as a federal prosecutor in New Jersey and Connecticut, and now serves as a senior advisor to the Grace Farms Foundation Justice Initiative, a nonprofit organization in New Canaan. If the young girl showed up at a house, if it was a Skid Row and the guy had no money, this crime might not have happened in the same way, he said. But Epstein, living in a mansion in New York, having these professional women being the first introduction to these young girls, that gives it an air of legitimacy. I've been saying that for the whole entire time on this podcast. It's so evident what was occurring here, and it's so obvious to see how these young girls could fall into that trap. It is especially in the society that we live in a society where you see successful people and all of a sudden you're feeling less, right? Because having more money, having more material items, that's what's put on a pedestal in our society. So these young girls see that and they automatically think, well, these are my betters. Whereas you and I all know, as you get older, that all goes away. Just like any thoughts you had about the prince being honorable because he's a prince. All of that shit goes away as you get older and you start getting into a punch fight with life. And these assistants and enablers, they too had this air of legitimacy. I'm sure they dressed well, had unlimited access to hairdressers, clothing. From what I've read, I'm sure they looked the part. That's how the crime was committed. The enablers look legitimate, just as Epstein looked legitimate, 100%. And that's why it's so maddening that these investigators, these prosecutors are still dragging their feet. It's all right here in black and white. How many more articles do I have to read? How many more articles do I have to produce? We have a catalog of over 300. How many more times do I have to get on here and rage about prosecutors dragging their feet? And it's not like we're sitting here and, we're not being patient, right? We understand. Everybody understands that the law takes time. You have to build your case. You have to be right. You want to make sure it's right. You have to respect everybody's constitutional rights, even though they might be scummy. Everybody has to have their constitutional rights respected. Okay, this has to be done the right way. I understand that. But you have had years to build your case. I've been at this since October, and I've built a huge case against these people. You mean to tell me that these seasoned prosecutors can't do the same? A little bit of effort here, boys and girls. I wonder how many prosecutors are on this case and how many man-hours are being spent on it. That's a question that I hope that the lawyers ask. That's something that should be public. Next time Berman is giving a press conference, somebody should definitely ask him that question because it's important. The more man-hours, the more chance there is at a break coming. Schechter noted that assistants who begin work in white-collar criminal enterprise often don't start the job knowing that they will be assisting an illegal operation, but once they start on that path and find rewards along the way, it can be hard to turn back. A native of Texas who earned a degree from the University of Texas at Dallas, Groff is a married mother. So look, she has a degree from college. That already puts her ahead of the game. So it is only greed at that point and being straight up evil that would motivate you to work with a man like Jeffrey Epstein. Considering, don't act like you didn't hear the rumors. There was rumors all the time about Epstein, about his proclivities. And for someone like Groff to act like, oh, well, I've never heard anything about Jeffrey Epstein. Oh, I didn't know he was sick. Well, yeah, okay, sure. Right. Nobody believes you, okay? Nobody believes you. Her home in New Canaan is appraised by the town assessor at $3.1 million. Well, must be nice. It must be nice to have your $3.1 million home in New Canaan, Connecticut. Look at the rest of flyover country. As she smokes her Virginia Slim cigarette and sucks down a dirty martini. Oh, the gall of it all. It makes me so mad. It makes me so mad. All of her property should be seized. It should all be seized up in this case. Charges should be brought against her. Her property should be sold off. And every single person that she was involved with abusing should get a piece of her dough as well. She should see what it's like to have to sweat out bills. She should see what it's like to live on the other side. She should have the stress of not being able to sleep out every night, the same way these survivors did. But yet, no, she's living the high life in a 3,200 square foot pad worth $3 million? Are you kidding me right now? The 3,200 square foot structure went up after the demolition of an older structure in 2012. Groff and her husband Ike faced trouble from the town's Planning and Zoning Commission in 2014 when it was determined that they added a structure that was classified as an accessory to the home without proper permits. It was allowed to remain. A neighbor who lived in the area said there was nothing unusual about the home or the family. The Groffs own another property in New Canaan as well, appraised as $1.5 million, according to the town hall records. So $4.5 million in real estate, $4.5 million in homes. Where did she get all this money as an executive assistant? I must have missed my calling in life. I could type 95 words per minute. Can I get me a job as an executive assistant? Do you really think she was pinching her pennies and saving all of her money to buy these houses? Or do you think that her buddy Epstein helped her along the way? Again, forensic accountants. Okay? SDNY? I'm giving you all the help you need here, okay? I can only lead you to the water. I can't make you drink it. After Epstein was arrested this summer, federal prosecutors said he was assisted by others in his abuse, though they did not name or identify the alleged accomplices. Again, I don't mind that, right? If you're doing an investigation, that's fine. Keep it close to the vest. Build your case. Make sure it's ironclad. No wiggle room. No loopholes. Make sure you're ready to go to war with Dershowitz, right? Be prepared. Understood. Totally on board with all of that. That's how a good prosecutor works. But also, a good prosecutor, when doors are slammed by people like Prince Andrew, a good prosecutor kicks them doors right the F open and shows up waving around subpoenas and with 50 FBI agents talking about, okay, well, you didn't want to talk then. How about now? Epstein allegedly worked with several employees and associates to ensure that he had a steady supply of minor victims to abuse. The Justice Department stated in its announcement of the arrest. The Justice Department is stating this. They're saying it in their statement that he worked with several employees and associates to ensure that he had a steady supply of minor victims. That is not enough to kick in the doors and wave in the 4-4s like Biggie Smalls said? What is going on here, folks? How are we still even talking about this right now? This case should be closed and shut. These survivors should be counting their dough and moving on with their lives. You and I should be looking for other true crime podcasts to get locked into. But no, here we are again, 167 straight days out here going crazy because the Department of Justice has a statement that they put out themselves where they say Epstein allegedly worked with several employees and associates to ensure that he had a steady supply of minor victims to abuse, and they're not arrested? You haven't been able to establish that that's factual in all this time? That's what you want me to believe. And then at the same time, you want me to believe that you're competent enough to continue to work on this case, to continue to chase justice? Mr. Berman, we need you to do a better job, sir. I'm imploring you to do a better job. I want to give you some backslaps, and I don't want to always be critical of you, but remember, you're a public servant. You work for the taxpayers, sir. And I'm going to be critical of your performance when it's called for, just as I will give you credit when credit is due. And that day will come when you start arresting some of these people the same way I've seen people get arrested for a lot less in this country. The indictment against Epstein refers to employee number 1, employee number 2, and employee number 3, without naming them. Beside being charged with one count of sex trafficking of minors by federal prosecutors in July, Epstein was also charged with conspiracy, which means other individuals were also involved, according to the feds. Again, I've talked about this as well, and it makes me mental. It drives me into the atmosphere with rage. This is obviously a criminal conspiracy. This is obviously a RICO case. It says it right here, okay? Epstein was also charged with conspiracy, which means other individuals were also involved, according to the feds. Now, why are they not sharing a cell with Michael Avenatti? Why are they not being held at MCC as we speak, being interrogated by whoever the most seasoned interrogator is, okay? And I'm talking whoever it is. And I want them to be harsh, 24 hours, no sleep, whatever it takes at this point. Because these people, they need to talk. They need to speak. They need to rat out who was in charge. And they need to understand that it's not going to stop. The scrutiny is not going to stop. Attorney Paul Cassell, who represents multiple victims of Epstein, told the media after Epstein's arrest that his clients were pushing for authorities to take a close look at Epstein's associates. Jane Doe 1 and 2 will continue to fight for all of Epstein's co-conspirators to be held accountable in New York, Florida, and anywhere else they committed crimes. Guess what? We're with you, all right? I'm with you. I'll be here every single night. Every single night, it doesn't matter. I will be here yelling from the mountaintops about how in the bleepity bleep 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 these people are still running free. Not one of them has been brought in. Not one of them has been put on the rack yet. Come on. If these people were engaged in illegal gambling, you would have already raided the house, SWAT team. You would have had their grandma, their uncle. Everybody would have been separated. You would have been telling every single person there that they're all going to prison for the rest of their lives unless they admitted to their crimes. You wouldn't have waited for the lawyers to come. None of that shit. And everybody out there listening to this podcast knows it. The two-tier justice system in this country is so beyond disgusting that there are no words to describe my distaste for it. How many times are we going to see average people be destroyed by the justice system over crimes much less than what we're seeing here and on a lot smaller scale? Meanwhile, Lesley Groff, Sarah Kellen Vickers, Nadia Marcinkova, Adriana Ross, they're all running around free. Ghislaine Maxwell's passing messages through her weird-ass friend Laura Goldman. Prince Andrew's riding around on his horse. And these survivors are still fighting tooth and nail for the justice that they so deserve. So guess what? Sometimes you have to choose which mountain you're going to die on, right? And this is the mountain I've chosen. I'm going to stand right here on top of this mountain, screaming and yelling from the top of it until somebody gets arrested. That's all. That's just the way it is. And we're going to continue putting these people on blast on a regular basis because that's what they deserve. The rest of the public who might not know about this case, who might just be stumbling upon this podcast for the first time right now as they're sitting around quarantined and they can't take another beating in Monopoly by their brother, so they decided I need to find a podcast, and they stumbled on this and they're hearing all of this for the first time. Imagine being that person. You'd be like, what is this guy talking about? Are you kidding me right now? There's no way any of that's true. And that's where I was at when I first started researching this case. I had no idea the half of it, folks. And still, as deep as we are, I wouldn't say we've just scratched the surface, because I think we've done a lot more than that. But we're about halfway down the rabbit hole, and there's still plenty of warrens to explore at the point we're at. So we're going to continue the investigation. We're definitely going to continue searching for answers. And I'm going to be on the podcast of the Prince and the Perv sometime this week. I don't know the exact date yet, but I'm going to be on the podcast with the gals from Australia, and we're going to have a nice little conversation about this whole entire case. So I'll make sure that I let you guys know when I'm going to be making an appearance over there. I'm very humbled and thankful and happy to be a part of that. I respect what those girls do very much. They've been on top of this from the very beginning. Almost same time I've had my podcast out, we've been in correspondence. So it's going to be a pleasure to hop on the podcast with them and talk to all of my Australian people. I mean, I have so many listeners from Australia. It's like 13% of the audience is from Australia. It's amazing to me. And so it's going to be great to talk to a whole different audience, maybe some people that have never had the chance to hear me and my fat yap get going. And it'll be nice to hopefully, maybe spread the message a little bit further, because at the end of the day, that's the goal for all of us. I know I could speak for the gals in Australia too. Their motivation is the same as mine: justice for these survivors. And that's just the way it is at this point, folks. And that's just the way it's going to be. All right, everybody, if you'd like to contact me, you can do that at Bobbycapucci at Proton Mail. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI at protonmail.com. If you're not following me on Twitter yet, what are you waiting for? You can find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All right, everybody, I'll be back tomorrow and we'll do it all over again, because guess what? I had so much fun tonight and the other previous 167 nights that I can't help myself at this point. Hopefully everybody's being safe, and hopefully everybody is not going crazy yet with their lockdown status. All right, everybody, until tomorrow.
You want your cannabis and you want it now. But let's be honest, the couch is comfortable and you're not leaving the house. Not to worry. Amuse has your back. They deliver high-quality cannabis products right to your front door. Think of them as a good friend with a great stash who's always available. From vape pens to flower, pre-rolls to beverages, topicals to edibles, they've got it. All without the dispensary hassle. Check them out at amuse.com and save $20 on us. That's right. Just use promo code PODCAST to get $20 off your first purchase. That's AMUSE.com. Promo code PODCAST. You want your cannabis and you want it now. But let's be honest, the couch is comfortable and you're not leaving the house. Not to worry. Amuse has your back. They deliver high-quality cannabis products right to your front door. Think of them as a good friend with a great stash who's always available. From vape pens to flower, pre-rolls to beverages, topicals to edibles, they've got it. All without the dispensary hassle. Check them out at amuse.com and save $20 on us. That's right. Just use promo code PODCAST to get $20 off your first purchase. That's AMUSE.com. Promo code PODCAST.